Okay, so perhaps this will come out clearer if I've used my headphones. I don't think that was very clear. Also, a couple of years of studying film and I can't seem to keep my phone camera steady. So, of course, I am here to talk about the many experiences of Cloud Atlas. Obviously, Cloud Atlas is the novel by David Mitchell. And I'm going to start by sort of reading to you a little passage from the book, and then we'll sort of get into why I love it. I know I'm supposed to just be reading off a screen, but the word count wasn't my friend, so even with taking pictures of headings, I missed it by a wild shot. I think I have about 1,800 words, So the passage reads, "The lovelorn, the cry for helpers, all mawkish tragedians who give suicide a bad name are the idiots who rush it, like amateur conductors. A true suicide is a paced, disciplined certainty. People pontificate, suicide is selfishness. Career churchmen like Pater go a step further and call it a cowardly assault on the living. Oafs argue this specious line for varying reasons: to evade the fingers of blame, to impress one's audience with one's mental fibre, to vent anger, or just because one lacks the necessary suffering to sympathise. Cowardice has nothing to do with it. Suicide takes considerable courage. The Japanese have the right idea. Now, what's selfish is to demand another to endure an intolerable existence just to spare families, friends, and enemies a bit of soul searching. The only selfishness lies in ruining a stranger's day by forcing them to witness a grotesqueness." So some people here might remember when I first spoke about my experiences of reading the novel Cloud Atlas ages ago, and I know that the prompt tells us to talk about one instance, but honestly, I couldn't choose one. This novel is, I think I'm going to use the term breathtaking wonder. One second. Yes. And so I'm going to go through my best attempt at describing what I think is the awe associated with immersing yourself in what I believe is the greatest novel of the 21st century. You'll notice that I've put some pictures throughout, and these pictures really are just, when I do a challenge, I will create like a little title page in my notebook and little scraps of notes as I go through. There's just some pictures of that. Also, if it's allowed, I've taken pictures of the headings to save on the word count because I was so scared I was going to go over. I was right. So, of course, I'll be going through the very best memories I have associated with the novel, and not all of them are just sitting there and reading it. Some of them are, I do things and I live the experience in the real world of reading Cloud Atlas. And I even have some cool ideas for the future, but that's not what I'm discussing today. I'm going to start off with paragraph 1, which isn't really a paragraph, it's a section of why I love Cloud Atlas and how it makes me feel. I apologise for the handwriting. So the language of Cloud Atlas can only be described as one of the most atmospheric experiences of the English language in the last 50 years. So I noted this in a former article called Cloud Atlas, a Reading Experience, where I've sort of proven time and time again that it's left me with this sense of awe. It's such a complex novel. And it changed the way I saw time, and especially like linear time, and the way I saw existence, especially considering those who had committed the final act of self-slaughter, as Hamlet says. So in fact, take a look at what I had to say about my reading experience of this book and other David Mitchell novels. I've put a picture of the passage in this article, and I stand by the fact that this book constantly beckons me back. And every time I've reread it, it's sort of immersed me in this whole different world, which has become more and more difficult to read because difficult and upsetting to leave, rather, especially now that I recognize what I'm reading as complex, but I also recognize the ending approaching, and that's really that sort of penultimate chapter with Robert Frobisher writes to Sixsmith. It's really quite upsetting. So the philosophy often permeates through the novel, and the best way to describe it is that it captures the very essence of the human soul. We often worry about the mortalities of those we love, and the theory of these infinite universes and timelines in which our souls are contained makes us not only believe in timelessness as this philosophy, but ensures that we commit acts in this life that have positive consequences. And obviously, for we are but drops in the ocean. And what is an ocean but a multitude of drops? If you're a Cloud Atlas fan, you will recognise that line. So we're going to move on to section 2, which I've called paragraph 2 for some reason. How it feels to read Cloud Atlas, a history. So I've often likened the experience of reading Cloud Atlas to being immersed in a lukewarm body of water or watching a clear, beautiful sunset whilst the summer air is crisp with hints of humidity. I honestly don't know whether anyone else can comprehend my weird metaphors and similes where I associate one experience with another. But if you've read my stuff, it happens a lot. Okay, so sorry. So I remember quite a while ago that I read Cloud Atlas on the night of my 21st birthday, and that was because I wasn't feeling great. I don't remember exactly how I felt, but I just knew that I was feeling a bit off, perhaps. And so I read some of my favourite passages from Cloud Atlas, like kind of as one would read the Bible, I guess. I'm not likening Cloud Atlas to the Bible. Please don't do this to me. So I read a passage called Letters from Zedekhelm, and the penultimate chapter, which is also another set of letters from Robert Frobisher, and it sort of made me feel a bit better, which is a bit weird because that happens to be the most depressing part of the book. So even if it can feel like a humid, crisp summer sunset, it can definitely also feel like a warm blanket on a winter night, because obviously my birthday's in winter. So, Frobisher. I often found a friend in Robert Frobisher. He is one of my favourite characters of all time in everything. He's been featured in quite a lot of my articles about things that I love. He's a pianist, he's a composer, he writes the Cloud Atlas Sextet. It's a piece of music which sounds almost dreamlike. And he's like this Mozart figure, like a demure version of Tom Hulce's Amadeus. He sort of subverts what you'd expect him to have at his level of talent. But he slowly becomes this man on the run. He's trapped by his creation and where it's led him. Some of the best scenes in the novel and the film are those that feature Frobisher, who's played by Ben Whishaw in the movie. He's a character who's sort of represents the misunderstood people of the universe and the beauty and the terror in art, the tragedy in art. Again, Amadeus. So when immersed in the novel, I wasn't actually just sitting there and reading it. It was also about sort of living it, and I've got some really cool ideas about a chapter called Somni 451. I often baked cakes dedicated to themes and motifs in the novel. I listened to the soundtrack while I was writing. Of course, I labelled my battered copy of my paperback copy of Cloud Atlas. I've attached pictures of me baking. I can't, who took those pictures? Somebody's standing over my shoulder taking those pictures. And I've also got pictures of the cupcakes and a nicer copy of the book where I can see a little bookmark sticking out. And I know that bookmark is on Frobisher's letters. I just know. That's how great I am. So this novel is my de facto comfort blanket. So it's a book filled with the most incredible philosophies about time and existence. It teaches us to be good people because humanity often depends on the slightest selfless action in order to become better. But more than anything, the novel implies that the base truth of humanity is that everything that we do in this life will impact the lives of others afterwards. And thus their actions impact not only themselves, but those after them. So your life is never really just your own, not entirely. And that's really a beautiful thing. Oh, lest we forget, I am aware of the negative consequences of negative actions, which is also something explored in this book, time and predacity. So no matter how much the clouds may change, human instinct definitely remains the same. It gets kind of dark at some points in the book, and that's why I like to concentrate on perhaps the stuff that I adore rather than things that terrify me. There are things that terrify me in that book. Anyways, section 3 is entitled When I Met David Mitchell. And this is really the main part, the main bulk of the essay. It's the main story of the memories. It's one thing I was really excited about was meeting the author of the novel. He was at the Manchester Literature Festival on the 14th of May, 2024 at 7 p.m. As you can probably imagine, I bought my ticket well in advance, and I've even put a picture of the ticket up. I took my battered paperback copy with me, and yeah, it was an excellent night. In the room, it wasn't exactly huge, but it was a small auditorium with a semicircle of seats. So everyone could pretty much see and hear the conversation that was going on. And it was really fantastic to see how humble he was about having created what is a work of absolute genius. I probably look like a very excited 4-year-old. That's my guess. And during the Q&A, I got to ask him a question, which was along the lines of how he felt about creating such timeless work that people are going to be in awe of for generations. And I told him that this book had changed my life. It changed my perspective on everything. And it was really at that moment where I realised that I had never actually said this out loud before. I'd written it down quite a few times. I'd written it down in essays and articles. I'd even thought about it. I've lived it, but I've never actually said it out loud. And obviously, the first time that I said it out loud, I said it to the author, and so you could imagine the catharsis. And so again, he answered with this great humility. And that is really something to be revered, something to be respected. I mean, if I'd written something quite as good as Cloud Atlas, I'd definitely be quite the show-off for the rest of my life, shoving it in everyone's face. But it does go to show that he actually believes what he's writing in the positive sense, that these qualities of human nature, generosity, brilliance, and positive actions can have positive consequences. It is a narrative about how humans have this incredible power to shape the fates of themselves and the fates of those around them. For example, the fact that Cloud Atlas had such a positive impact on me. And after the talk was over, David Mitchell stayed behind to sign some books, and for some reason I made a comment about the Beatles to him. And I think it was something to do with the fact that this is really my Beatlemania, that meeting him is like a fan of the Beatles meeting one of the 4 Beatles, and that would be George Harrison because he's the best Beatle. And I bought myself this brand new copy of Cloud Atlas, which is this beautiful 20th anniversary edition. And he actually signed my battered paperback, and he put a really nice comment in there that I've also added to the article. And what better way to celebrate the occasion, solidify that I'd actually been there, to take promptly to Twitter and put a post underneath a picture of the signage. So it says, if you were to ask me what some of the greatest days of my life are, there's one I can tell you right now: meeting David Mitchell. Relatively short and doesn't really catch the dopamine which rushed en masse like a rush of blood to the head as I walked into the room. But obviously I'd had a lot of time to compose myself. It wasn't really the same emotion by then. So at the end of the night, I ate some Japanese food with my family and I went home. I cannot tell you how much I wanted to just go back and get stuck into the novel and sucked back into those worlds and times and disappear off into the ether of Cloud Atlas once again. So in conclusion, even though it's probably not my favourite book of all time, Cloud Atlas will always have a special place in my identity, as it has come to change a lot of things about me. One of the things I began to let go of was the attitude that I was the only person impacted by my actions, and even though every time I reread the novel I learnt something else, the experience always remained the same. It is one of the best reading experiences of all time. And I know some of you have read my article, What's in a Reading Experience, but there's a lot to be said about Cloud Atlas that I hope I've covered here. And of course, we're going to end with one of my favourite passages from the book. And again, it's by Robert Frobisher, the true Wildian, and it's from his final letter to Sixsmith. And he states, "Time cannot permeate this sabbatical. We do not stay dead long. Once my Luga let me go, my birth next time round will be upon me in a heartbeat. 13 years from now we'll meet again at Gresham. 10 years later I'll be back in this same room, holding this same gun, composing this same letter. My resolution as perfect as my many-headed sextet. Such elegant certainties comfort me at this quiet hour." Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the many experiences of Cloud Atlas by me.